Here is Oracle SQL Plus. We are going to evaluate a table called customer. In this customer table, I issued a command called describe, DESC, the describe command. That describes the structure of the customer table, and as you can see, there's a customer ID, a name, an address, city, state, zip, area code, phone number, salesperson ID, credit limit, and comments. For this demonstration, however, we're only going to be using a couple of columns, customer ID and the name column specifically. If I simply list the customer ID and the name from the customer table, it turns out to be a bit of a list, so you can see what it's like. And what a cursor does is that a cursor allows the data to be processed in memory within Oracle. We are going to now create what's called an explicit cursor. And we do that, we can do it right here on the SQL prompt by issuing a declare cursor statement. And we issue a declare statement to a declare cursor, specify the name of the cursor, and I've specified the name of the cursor as being cust_cur. And I'm going to say that this cursor is going to be selecting the customer ID and the name from the customer table. I'm going to then create a var that will be holding the data from the cursor. Cust_rec is the name of the cursor, and cust_cur is the name of the cursor, and that's going to store the customer ID and name from the customer table. We are then, in this explicit cursor definition, declaring a variable called custrec, and custrec is going to be, I made a little mistake here. Let me correct that mistake by going in the editor. And custrec is going to be a row. Custrec is going to contain a row from this cursor. Cursors process one line of data at a time, or one row of data at a time. Once we have declared our cursor, which we did right here, and we have declared what's going to be holding the value from the cursor, specifically the row that is going to be holding, we're going to now begin processing the cursor by opening it. First, open the cursor by issuing a begin, where our processing will begin. It declares where all the variables and declarations take place. Begin is where the actual processing happens. I have opened my cursor. I'm going to now fetch some data from the cursor, and I'm going to store it in the custrec. Custrec stores one row from the cursor. Once the cursor has been opened, you can issue a fetch statement. Fetch one row from the cust cursor and store that row into custrec. We are going to, once we fetch that row, we are going to use the DBMS output package supplied with Oracle to view the customer ID and the customer name. When we store the row type associated with a cursor, the names of the columns inside of the data, inside of the underlying data table. In this case, the data table is customer. The names of the columns do not change. Customer ID still remains the name of the column, and name still remains the name of the column. None of that has changed. The only thing that has changed is that now that has been preceded by custrec, and custrec stores one row of data at a time into that has been fetched from the cursor. DBMS output package is utilized to display the results. I can then close my cursor and end my explicit loop and display the results. Here you go. As you can notice, it says PL/SQL procedure successfully completed. A couple of more things to mention. Here's the number, which is the customer ID as I specified right here, and the name as I specified right here. A few things to mention right here. One is that these results are shown in SQL Plus on the screen due to the fact that the server output has been set to on. This variable inside SQL Plus, server output, if I set the server output to be off and try to execute the process again, notice it says that PL/SQL procedure successfully completed, but I do not see the results that I saw before. In order to show the results, I have to set the server output on, run the procedure again, and I see the results. That's one thing to mention. The other thing to mention is that this particular cursor displayed this particular explicit cursor, and the block that we used, this block right here, inside the beginning and end is the block. This block that I used only displayed the first row of data. Only displayed the first row of data. We can now edit this existing piece of code and insert a loop. What is a loop going to do? Well, in this loop, we are going to process every single row of data until there are no more rows in the cursor. And the way we do that is by including the word loop after the cursor has been opened. After the cursor has been opened, we open a loop. We use the fetch statement to fetch the data to the cursor, and we add one more line of code, which is going to be the exit when. And we're going to say exit when the cursor does not have any data in it anymore. The cur percent not found, this right here, percent not found, is one of the attributes associated with the cursor object. What this is going to do is it's going to exit this particular block of code when there are no more rows to process. Until that time, it's going to process the loop. Watch. The remaining lines remain the same. So what we have done here is we have added the loop statement, the exit when cur percent not found attribute, and we have ended the loop. And after the loop is done, we are closing the cursor. Let's have a look at this, and this should list, as you can see, it lists all of the IDs and all of the names associated with the customer table. We can also edit the cursor and add to the cursor a where clause. For example, where customer ID is less than 200. If we do this, we can, here it is. Now it only displays the IDs that are in the 100s or less than 200. We can also do something else. We can make it so that we can change the exit when. And we can say exit when custrec dot customer ID equals 105. If we do that, then we should only see, if you look on top here, we should only see items up until 104. So I believe it should stop at every mountain and not display 105 or KNT Sports. Let's see if that's what it does. We run this. There you go. As you can see, it displays 100 and it displays 101, 102, 103, and 104 only. And here's a cursor right here. We declare the cursor. We call it custcur. This is a definition of the cursor. So we're selecting the customer ID and the name from the customer table. We are then further limiting the cursor by reducing its results to all of the customer IDs that are less than 200. We are then creating a custrec variable which will hold one row of the cursor. We then begin our block of code that's going to be executed. We open the cursor. We issue a loop. We fetch data from the cursor. Fetching the data actually runs the select statement that's specified up here. When we issue the fetch statement, it runs a specified cursor. In this case, it executes the select statement. And it stores the data inside custrec variable, which holds the row type, the entire row. We are telling it we want to exit when the customer ID variable in the custrec equals 105. Up until that point, we are displaying the customer ID and the name using the DBMS output package associated with Oracle. We are then ending our loop, closing our cursor, ending our block, and executing the cursor.